My name is Josephine Josie Carter, and I'm 28. I used to think I came from the kind of family you brag about in holiday letters: suburbs outside Marietta, cul-de-sacs with chalk drawings and July cookouts, the smell of cut grass, clinging to everything like a promise. My mom baked cookies for my teachers. My dad taught me to mow the lawn at 10, as if it were some sacred ritual. My sister and I built forts out of couch cushions and declared them castles. For a long time, I told myself we were close, maybe even good. I tell myself different things now. On the morning of my engagement party, my mother texted, "We're not feeling up to a party today. Hope it's lovely." No explanation, no follow-up call, just a sentence with a soft smile at the end that felt like a shrug. I stared at it for a full minute, then put my phone face down on the counter. I told myself maybe there'd been a health scare, a car problem, something real. I told my fiancé, Caleb, not to worry. The party would go on. Caleb's parents, Gary and Denise, had rented a hall in Roswell, all warm wood and soft lights, a jazz trio easing the edges off everyone's nerves. Place cards, a full bar, dinner plated like magazine spreads. They handled everything with that quiet competence people mistake for ease. Guests arrived in waves. Laughter rose from table to table. I watched the empty chairs we'd reserved for my family like they were doors that might still swing open. They didn't. When the toast came, Denise spoke about beginnings that start as endings, and how sometimes love isn't a thing you find so much as a place you decide to live. The room misted over. I smiled till my cheeks trembled. The jazz trio slid into a standard. Someone clinked a glass at the wrong time. I told myself this was fine. Maybe tomorrow there would be apologies. Maybe tomorrow there would be reasons. My phone buzzed. It was Facebook. A tag. My uncle had posted a photo. My mom, my dad, my sister, 2 cousins, all lined up under a beach umbrella, drinks lifted, sunglasses on, a cheesy stock filter stamped across the sky. The caption knocked the air from my lungs harder than any insult ever could. Finally together again. The noise in the hall thinned to a ringing in my ears. My hand went cold around the glass I hadn't finished. Caleb leaned in. "Hey," he murmured, "what's wrong?" "Nothing," I said. And I meant not here, not in front of these people who showed up. I locked my phone and set it aside like it had burned me. We sang along to a song we didn't know the words to. We hugged the guests who deserved to be hugged. I said all the right thank yous. When it was over, I walked to the car, closed myself inside, and stared at the dashboard like it could tell me how to be a person who wasn't currently unraveling by thread. That night, I logged into my bank account and canceled the mortgage autopay. The house was still in my name. Those payments had been going out for them. For years. I didn't tell anyone. I just cut the cord. The first 6 days felt like biting down on something too hard and pretending you're fine. Day 7, I heard the familiar rattle of my dad's truck pulling into my driveway like authority had a sound, and he still owned it. He didn't park. He arrived, the way men arrive when they believe the scene is already theirs. I met him outside before he could knock. He took in the house, my shoes by the door, the potted rosemary on the steps, details he could pretend were proof of something. "We need to talk," he said, and I heard what he meant. "You need to listen." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why the beach looked bright and the caption read, "Finally together again on the day meant to celebrate my engagement." I didn't interrogate the text message with its soft apology that wasn't one. I just said, "You're not entitled to me anymore." He blinked like he'd missed a step on the stairs. "Excuse me?" I repeated, "You're not entitled to me. Not my time, not my money, not my life." The words tasted like metal, a clean cut. You don't show up, you don't get to collect. His jaw worked. Your mother wasn't feeling well. Then she could have said that. She could have called. You could have called. I let the silence sit between us until it grew heavy and undeniable. Instead, you posted a vacation. You made a statement. He laughed without humor, like this was a tantrum he could outlast. "We had that trip planned for months, Josie. You knew." "I didn't," I said. "And even if I had, there are things you move for." He looked past me to the street as though an answer might be parked there. "So you cut off the mortgage," he said finally, accusation pinched into every syllable. "It was generosity," I said, calm and steady. It had a condition I didn't name until now: respect. That payment depended on you seeing me. You didn't. Your mother's upset, he said, like that settled any ledger. So am I said. And then, because there are truths that come only when you stop being the child in the conversation, I don't really have a family anymore, not the one I was born into. He stared at me, waiting for the punchline, the apology, the wobble. When none came, he lifted his chin as if that could make me smaller. You're making a mistake. Maybe, I said, but it'll be mine. Behind him, wind moved the neighbors' wind chimes into a thin, restless music. A dog barked 2 streets over. The rosemary brushed my calf. I could smell the green. I thought of the beach photo, how the umbrella threw a perfect lemon wedge of shade across faces that didn't belong to me anymore. I thought of the caption and what it didn't say. Without you. You can come inside, I offered, though I didn't know why I said it. Some reflex, some old choreography the body does when the mind has left the room. We can sit at the table like people who care about the truth. He didn't move. Turn the autopay back on, he said. I smiled, small and exhausted. No. He didn't slam the truck door when he left, and somehow that felt worse. It meant there'd been no heat to cool, no argument to rue. Just an adjustment, a recalibration. Like discovering a bridge you never tested won't hold your weight. Inside, Caleb was waiting in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, like a question he was willing to let me answer in my own time. Do you want tea? He asked. I want quiet, I said, and he nodded, already filling the kettle because there are kinds of quiet that need steam and ceramic to hold them. I wish I could tell you I cried then, that there was a clean catharsis and a turning of the page. But grief, when it comes like this, is a series of drafts you keep revising. I dried my eyes because I had, at some point, already cried them out. I washed a plate that didn't need washing. I checked the locks twice. At midnight, Denise texted, How did the evening go? Do you need me to make a call? There are mothers who ask you to shrink so their lives can fit better. And there are mothers who show up with their sleeves rolled and a quiet, we've got this that feels like shelter. I stared at her message and typed, Not yet, thank you. Then I set the phone down and watched the kettle try to be useful. I didn't sleep, not really. I lay awake and took inventory. The auto payoff, the driveway conversation, the sound the truck made when it shifted out of my life. Somewhere in there, a thought settled, heavy and certain. I had been subsidizing a story that didn't include me. I had been paying for a seat in a family where my chair could sit empty, while someone else lifted a drink under a blue umbrella and called it togetherness. In the morning, I watered the rosemary until the soil went dark and fragrant. Caleb pressed a mug into my palms and kissed the top of my head. We didn't say much. I didn't need words to know the war had already started and that this time I would not be drafted against myself. Later, I'd understand that silence wasn't the absence of conflict with my parents. It was their favorite strategy. Later, there would be photos slid across a dining table, a phone call that didn't leave room for counter-arguments, and a midnight blue Cadillac parked in our driveway like a thesis statement about the kind of people who claim you when it matters. But right then, standing in my kitchen with steam on my face and the taste of something bitter and true in my mouth, all I knew was this. I wasn't going to beg anyone to treat me like I mattered, not when I already do. The silence didn't last long. By the next morning, my phone lit up with a wall of texts from my sister, Emily. Long paragraphs, half pity, half poison. She wrote like a prosecutor, not a sibling. You overreacted. The beach trip had been planned for months. You know how Dad gets when he's stressed. That one almost made me laugh. She always used him as an excuse, like his moods were weather we all had to live under. I didn't reply. Not to her, not to my mother's follow-up email that just said, hope you're okay. Sometimes silence is the only honest response left. That night, I sat across from Gary and Denise at their dining table. A manila folder lay between them like a case file. I thought they'd called me over to talk about peace, to tell me to let it go. Denise opened the folder instead. Inside were photos from the engagement party, the unfiltered kind, guests whispering, empty chairs marked with my family's names, someone mouthing, "Where are they?" Denise's voice was steady. They made a statement by not showing up. Now it's our turn. I blinked. Our turn? Gary leaned forward, elbows on the table. Josie, respect goes both ways. You've done enough of the giving. It's time they learn what it feels like to lose access to your generosity. Denise picked up her phone. I'm calling your mother. Denise! But she'd already dialed. Her tone never rose, but her words landed like clean cuts. She told my mother that I wasn't her backup spouse, that I didn't owe them a cent, and that the mortgage would stay unpaid. I heard the click when my mother hung up without saying goodbye. I expected fallout. I didn't expect a Cadillac. 3 days later, a truck backed into our driveway towing a brand new midnight blue XT6 with a bow across the hood. Caleb was beside me, blinking like he'd stepped into someone else's life. Denise climbed down first, waving. You'll need something decent to drive to the wedding venue walkthroughs. I didn't move. The gift wasn't about transportation. It was a declaration that love shows up where blood refuses to. The next afternoon, Emily came storming into the pharmacy where I work, red-faced, eyes bright with borrowed righteousness. Are you really okay taking handouts from Caleb's parents now? I kept my voice level. Handouts usually come with expectations. All they've ever asked is that I be happy. She blinked. You think that's normal? I think it's healthy. Her jaw clenched. Mom says you're letting them control you. I smiled. Mom's been controlling me for years. This feels like freedom. She didn't know what to do with that. She turned and left without buying anything. That night, I watched the Cadillac from the window. Its paint caught the streetlight like still water. I thought about my parents, about how silence can be louder than shouting. They hadn't called, hadn't texted, not even a sarcastic comment online. Just absence. Clean, deliberate. A week later, my mother reappeared on Facebook with a photo of a seafood platter from the Keys. The caption read, "Peace and quiet is the best medicine." I didn't need a translation. It meant, we're fine without you. I could have felt small, but I didn't. I felt awake. Caleb wrapped his arms around me from behind. You okay? Better than I should be. Denise's voice echoed in my head from that first night. You don't have to beg anyone to treat you like you matter. I whispered it out loud like a prayer, and for the first time, I almost believed it. A month after the Cadillac arrived, Gary sat us down again. Same table, same folder, only this time it was thicker. Inside were real estate listings, spreadsheets, and a handwritten note. You two shouldn't start married life in debt. Let us help. Denise smiled softly. You've both worked hard. You deserve a home that's truly yours. I looked at the numbers, at the words down payment gift, and felt a strange mix of gratitude and guilt. I'd been sending my parents money for years. $600 every month for their mortgage, their taxes, my sister's car. Now someone was offering to give back what I hadn't even realized I'd lost. That night, Caleb and I signed the papers for a small craftsman house on the edge of Roswell. Quiet street. Maple trees. It smelled like fresh paint and second chances. I should have been happy, but part of me kept waiting for a cost that never came. The next morning, my parents appeared. No warning. They parked across the street like spies. Caleb opened the door, polite but guarded. My father stepped inside without waiting for permission. Nice place, he said, eyes sweeping over everything. Who paid for it? I folded my arms. We did. Meaning Gary and Denise, my mother added. Her voice had that sugar-sour tone she used when pretending to be kind. We're just worried, sweetheart. People can take advantage when you're emotional. I met her gaze. When was the last time either of you did something for me without expecting a return? They both froze. Silence, then deflection. My father muttered, You've changed. Maybe I finally stopped auditioning. They left without another word. That evening, my mother posted a long status online about losing children to controlling families and forgetting where you come from. My sister liked it. My uncle commented with a Bible verse. I didn't respond. A week later, Gary and Denise invited us back for dinner. Halfway through the meal, Denise placed a new document on the table. We're creating a joint trust for you and Caleb, she said, to build your life, not to owe anyone for it. You're family now. Her words filled a space I hadn't realized was hollow. But 3 days later, an envelope showed up in our mailbox. My mother's cursive on the front, the kind she reserved for invitations and guilt. Inside, a polite letter disguised as concern. She mentioned misunderstandings, suggested we reconnect, and then slipped in the real motive. We've been hearing things about this new trust. Just want to be sure everything you're doing is really in your best interest. Don't let people buy your loyalty. You still have a real family. I laughed out loud. The kind of laugh that sounds more like a choke. I didn't show Caleb. I knew how angry he'd get. I folded the letter and tucked it into a drawer, but Denise found out anyway, because my father called her directly. She was in our backyard when she took the call, pruning the hydrangeas she'd insisted on planting. I heard only her end, calm, deliberate, every word like glass sliding into place. If you want her to come back, she said, try being someone worth coming back to. 3 days later, another letter arrived, this time from a lawyer. My parents were filing a repayment claim for shared family assets. They listed every dollar I'd ever given them, the mortgage payments, the car I co-signed for Emily, even a set of kitchen appliances I'd ordered during their renovation. They were suing me for generosity. I sat at the counter, staring at the paper until the words blurred. Caleb read it over my shoulder. Let them try, he said. Gary didn't hesitate. He called a friend, an attorney he'd known since college. Quiet, sharp, all competence. 2 days later, we filed a counterclaim. Full reimbursement, plus damages for harassment. When I signed my name, my hand didn't shake. For the first time, I realized something. I wasn't fighting against my parents anymore. I was fighting for myself. That night, as the printer hummed out the final pages, I thought about every payment I'd sent over the years, the invisible strings attached to each one. Cutting them wasn't revenge. It was release. Still, I knew it wasn't over. My parents had missed my engagement party. They had sued me, but the next time I saw their names, it wasn't on a letter, it was on an RSVP card. They were coming to my wedding. We kept the wedding small, 70 people at most, a hilltop venue overlooking the lake at sunset. Denise and Gary handled every detail, the menu, the flowers, the jazz trio instead of a DJ. I told them I didn't want drama, just peace. But peace never comes uninvited. A week before the ceremony, the RSVP envelope landed in our mailbox. My parents' names printed neatly, box checked, will attend. No note, no call, just the assertion that they still had the right to show up in my story. Caleb looked at me. Do you want them there? I want them to see, I said. Not to reconcile, to watch something they can't take credit for. Denise wanted them banned. Gary said it was our day, our choice. But I meant what I said. Let them sit in the back row and realize the distance they'd built. They arrived 5 minutes before the ceremony, late enough to be noticed. My mother wore black, high-collared, like mourning. My father's suit was wrinkled, sunglasses still on inside. They sat in the last row, silent, ghosts pretending to be guests. I didn't look their way once. When I walked down the aisle, the lake caught the light like liquid gold. Caleb's eyes met mine, steady, full of quiet promise. Our vows were simple, not grand declarations, but truths we'd already lived. We show up. We keep showing up, Denise cried. Gary squeezed her hand. For a moment, I felt stillness, like the world had finally stopped spinning fast enough for me to breathe. By dinner, my parents were gone. They'd slipped out before the cake was cut. I thought that was the end of it, until a server approached me with a small white envelope. Someone asked me to give this to you, she said. Said not to open it until you got home. I didn't need to guess who it was from. Later that night, while Caleb showered and the sound of running water filled the quiet, I sat in the living room in my wedding dress, holding the envelope. Inside was a folded note and a check. The note read, "Returning what you think we owe you. We won't be contacting you again." The check was for $28,000, every penny I'd ever sent them. Mortgage payments, taxes, the car, the credit card I'd paid off when my dad maxed it out during the pandemic, down to the centie. I thought I'd feel vindicated, freed. Instead, it felt like a divorce decree. They'd turned our entire relationship into a ledger, settled the balance, and signed off without emotion. Caleb came downstairs, saw the check in my hands, and stopped. "What are you going to do with it?" I stared at the paper. "I don't know." He sat beside me, fingers brushing mine. "You don't owe them closure." I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. There's a special kind of grief when you realize some people would rather erase history than heal it. 2 days later, I cashed the check. Not out of spite, but because it was the only honest act left between us. After it cleared, I waited for something. Anger, regret, relief. None came, just silence. Weeks passed. No texts, no calls, no cryptic Facebook posts, nothing. It was as if they'd vanished into the same beach horizon they'd chosen over me. Christmas came. Caleb and I spent it with Gary and Denise in Colorado. Snow piled high outside the cabin. We made soup, watched old movies, built a fire that crackled louder than any family conversation I used to beg for. It should have felt peaceful, and mostly it was. But every now and then I'd catch myself thinking of that check, that number, that cold, tidy ending. Not for what it paid back, but for what it cost. Spring came quietly. The world moved on, even if my thoughts hadn't. Every once in a while I'd reach for my phone like muscle memory, to text my mother for a recipe, or to ask my father about some home repair trick he used to swear by. I always stopped myself before typing the first word. Grief has layers. You peel one away only to find another. I wasn't missing them, not really. I was missing the version of them I'd made up to survive. By May, Caleb and I had settled into our new home. The rooms finally smelled like us: coffee, paint, and lavender. One afternoon, Denise called. "We want you two to come up to the lake house for Memorial Day," she said. "Just something small. Grill, music, no expectations." We went. The drive was long, lined with pines that opened into a view of still water and a dock glowing orange under the sunset. It was quiet, almost too quiet, but in a way that felt like healing instead of absence. After dinner, Denise disappeared for a moment and came back holding a small box wrapped in tissue paper. "For you," she said, placing it in my hands. I peeled back the paper. Inside was a polished brass key. Gary smiled. "To the lake house," he said. "Figured it was time it belonged to more than just us. We'll still use it for a while, but the deed's going in your names." I stared at it, speechless. "I can't accept this." Denise shook her head. "You already did. You earned it the moment you chose peace over approval." Tears slipped down before I could stop them. It wasn't the house. It was what it meant, belonging without conditions. That night, lying awake beside Caleb, I turned the key over in my palm. For years, I'd sent my parents money, effort, forgiveness, and somehow I'd always been the one left in debt. Now, holding that key, I realized I'd finally broken even. A week later, a box arrived on our doorstep. No return address, but I knew the handwriting, my sister's. Inside were 2 childhood trophies, a baby photo in a cracked frame, and my old hoodie from high school. Nothing else. All the expensive gifts, furniture, and electronics I'd bought them over the years, those they kept. What they sent back were the sentimental scraps. Caleb lifted the photo carefully. "You okay?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah, I think this is their version of closure." We buried the box in the back of the closet, between old coats and holiday decorations. Some memories are safer when they sleep. Summer came, and the air softened. The lake key hung on our wall by the door. Every time sunlight hit it, it reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten, that love doesn't keep score, and family isn't a debt to collect. Now, when I look back, I don't feel bitterness, just gratitude for the people who showed up when others walked away. It's strange, learning that grieving and being grateful can live in the same heart. But maybe that's what healing really is, letting both exist without apology. Because sometimes the truest closure isn't a conversation or an apology. It's the quiet decision to stop reopening the wound. And that's exactly what I've done.